It's the worst of the CBC for September 23rd, 2019, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. Let's cut right to it. Today's CBC is We're All Gonna Die. It's the We All Gonna Die version of the news. It's the climate summit. It has gotten over half of the hour of news, even though we're in the middle of election, because, as you all know, unless we tax everything, we are all going to die scientists have now said it's no longer 18 months, it's now 3 minutes. So unless you stop eating meat and then pay taxes on everything just start paying 10% more taxes to the government. If you don't do that before this video ends and you start watching it, you will be dead. So that is what the science has now said. So there's a lot to unpack here in this. It's both the worst covered story and the biggest omission. There's a lot of stuff we can talk about the Canadian election, but those same lines on farmer care will be around tomorrow that we can deal with. So what's being said is basically they're propping up young environmental activists, right? Greta Thunberg's on the news. We're all going to die. I don't care about your anti-promises. Okay. It is sad to watch her. It really is, because I don't like making fun of kids for this. And this is sort of where the media is in this in-between stage of, we should allow, David Suzuki Foundation was advocating for 8-year-olds to vote, right? We should listen to the 16-year-old. But also, Omar Carter didn't know what he was doing when he was building those IEDs, laughing about killing Canadians and American soldiers. So there's that whole aspect to it. And then there's the actual emissions crisis thing. So they've talked about we need to triple our goals. So destroy our economy 3 times. Don't worry. The Chinese will follow us, just blindly destroy our economy. And the Chinese, they really care about climate change, guys. So we need to triple destroy our economy. We're only destroying it at level 1 now. We need to take it up to level 3 is the effect here. And the goal is to be carbon neutral by 2030, whatever, and then completely off carbon emissions by 2050. It's unfeasible, but this is the standard propaganda goal from the United Nations cabal. Okay. So what they did say, and this is probably the most telling thing of climate activist nonsense, is where does science go and where does ideology go here? And you can really see it when they started talking about the Americans. So they were hammering, it's like all the world leaders are here in New York, except for one major world leader, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not at the climate activism summit today. He's at a summit for religious freedoms and the end of religious persecution around the world. So there's hundreds of thousands of people being slaughtered in Nigeria by Islamists. We have the persecution of the Uyghur Muslims in China. We have the slaughter of Yazidis in Iraq and Syria, right? We can talk about, the Rohingya crisis. There's some Muslims being killed. Jews have already been kicked out of the Middle East, but Christians are being eradicated across the Middle East, Coptic Christians everywhere. The assault on Christians in Thailand from, quasi-Pakistani Islamists. There's real problems. Like, we're talking about, people are dying of climate change. Well, no, millions of people are dying from religious persecution. That's a real issue. People are actually dying. Not in I'm dying because I think it's 1 degree older and we're saying this asthma attack is climate change related. Or no, it's no, people are being hacked to death with machetes, burned alive. Hindus and Sikhs are being forcibly converted in Pakistan. This is a real issue. People are dying. But they say this shows America's priorities, right? What's really important, which is climate change, right? Persecution of Christians and Yazidis and whatever. People actually dying and being murdered horribly, a problem we can do something about, that's not a real issue. Instead, climate. But the other thing is, then they go on to hit Trump, and this is where the real sort of omission and fake news goes into overdrive. Because they said things like, Trump, he's not taking climate seriously because he's ripped up all the previous agreements from Obama government and even stopped some initiatives in California. And here's where this is where the lie is. This is where the lie and what they do not say. Since 2016, the country that has reduced carbon emissions the most by per capita and on a net base is the United States of America. Why? The reason is, as I've said before, it's natural gas and nuclear energy. Okay? Natural gas is cleaner and more efficient than oil. Oil is more efficient and cleaner than coal. We've talked about the science of this a million times, and I'll do so again probably in the near future. But this is where the lie is. The country that has reduced carbon emissions the most is the United States of America. And at the climate summit, Right? This is why no one actually is taking the climate seriously. The Green Party in Canada doesn't even have nuclear energy on their platform. Right? We all have to be powered by unicorn farts. And if it's not that, then it's oppression or whatever. We are not talking about the fact that America has reduced carbon emissions. Right? That's the big bugaloo in this whole thing. And if people were really serious about the climate, if people were really dead set that the carbon emissions are going to kill us, they would put aside ideology. They'd say, listen, I don't like Trump because he's mean and he talks too much with his hands and whatever. But we have to talk about why America has been able to reduce carbon emissions. Right? And you can say, oh, it's not sustainable because they're just getting more addicted to natural gas. Like, you can make that argument. I think that argument is false. But you can make that argument. But the fact that they're not even addressing the argument shows that they're a propaganda outlet. So that is lying by omission. This story is so covered falsely. It's filled with children and doomsday sayers. And you watch the people and they're wearing plastics and petroleum products while they're complaining about the environment. It's rank hypocrisy and terrible news coverage. So that's what I have to say for today's CBC. On the Rosemary Barden scale, it's about an 8 on the Rosemary Barden scale. I've seen worse. I mean, I'm getting a bit desensitized to this, but 8 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barden scale. So I'll see you tomorrow for our next episode of The Worst of the CBC.